Hello, welcome to Team Australia's briefing on cyber operations and risk management. As you can all see, our presentation today will cover a healthy range of topics, so without further ado, let's begin. No matter how or where the software is created or purchased, Australia has several software assurance needs and expectations that must be met. In developing these needs and expectations, we referred to Nancy Mead of the Software Engineering Institute's 7 principles, which are focused on addressing the challenges of acquiring, building, deploying, and sustaining systems to achieve a desired level of confidence for software assurance. These concepts are: risk drives assurance decisions, risk concerns shall be aligned across all stakeholders and all interconnected technology elements, dependency shall not be trusted until proven trustworthy, attack shall be expected, assurance requires effective coordination among all technology participants, assurance shall be well planned and dynamic, and the means to measure and audit overall assurance should be built in. There are 6 stages to the software development lifecycle, or SDLC. They are: 1. Planning. During the stage, the desired outcome is identified. Once the goal or goals are named, the individual parts and process flows needed to reach the goal or goals are defined, and the required hardware and software are identified. 2. Analysis. This is a continuation of planning where goals and the steps required to reach them are reviewed. 3. Design. The overall proposed design of the software is reviewed by stakeholders. Approaches to be applied during development are identified and based upon a design document specification, or DDS. 4. Implementation. The starting point of active project development. Software developers leverage their tools and techniques to turn the design into reality. 5. Testing and integration. After the software is believed to be complete, it must be tested for bugs and functionality in a test or limited distribution environment. And finally, 6. Maintenance. This is an ongoing stage of the SDLC. The software is patched and upgraded as new functionalities are needed or vulnerabilities are discovered. Our SDLC is currently influenced by agile methodologies. Scrum and Extreme Programming, or XP, are 2 examples. Agile methodologies like Scrum and XP are typically more inclusive of the customer and consist of multiple phases or sprints where things are planned, designed, or redesigned, built, tested, and reviewed. They acknowledge and allow for changes and can better incorporate risk management concepts in some of the older methodologies, such as waterfall. We have identified several potential risks to the software supply chain. Obviously, natural and human-made disasters are something every organization will have to contend with. These include acts of terror, hurricanes, and protests. But the human threat is perhaps the greatest of them all. Individuals inside and outside of the chain may seek to attack one or more links, compromising the potential confidentiality, integrity, and/or availability of the software as a whole, or one or more of its components. The insertion of backdoors, which allow an attacker remote access into a system, cyber attacks that result in a data breach, the intentional theft of information, and the insertion of malicious code are all potential threats. We discuss options and make recommendations for dealing with these risks later in the presentation. All devices have software and therefore security vulnerabilities. Software vulnerabilities consist of issues and bugs in the software, which can be a result of coding errors that will cause the system to perform incorrectly. This altered performance can cause the system to crash or to have connectivity issues. Information can also be leaked due to software flaws. The security of the system is impacted by the presence of unpatched vulnerabilities that can potentially be exploited, and both developers and users need to be able to assess the security level of software systems in order to improve them. Some software vulnerabilities to be concerned with include SQL injections, cross-site scripting, buffer overflows, and 0 days. SQL injections influence and manipulate systems by a code injection attack that exploits vulnerabilities. SQL injections inject a query to the data from the client's view of the application or server. This injection can be executed by encoding or replacing special characters with the American Standard Code for Information Interchange, or ASCII code. The intruder bypasses authentication and mimics a user's identity, which can result in compromising the system. The intruder can also corrupt the data, release the data, delete the data, and make the data unavailable. Testing for this attack is vital to keeping the system secure. Cross-site scripting is a type of injection attack that utilizes a vulnerability to execute malicious scripts. When a user visits a web page that has been exploited, the browser executes the malicious scripts known as a cross-site scripting attack. Cross-site scripting attacks are concerning because the consequences can be session hijacking, sensitive data leakage, cookie theft, and web content defacement. Buffer overflows are a software coding issue that allows an attacker the ability to exploit software gaining access to the system. Normally, memory is allocated to a specific character string. A buffer overflow occurs when additional data that the buffer is capable of handling overflows into adjacent storage, causing the system to be corrupted, overwritten, or to crash. Simultaneously, the buffer overflow creates an entry point for a cyber attack to occur. These malicious actions are the result of the coding error, which can be prevented by performing regular testing for their vulnerability and mitigation efforts. 0 days are software vulnerabilities resulting from security flaws that are unknown to the vendor or flaws known to the software vendor, but for which a patch is not available to fix. This vulnerability can be exploited by hackers by allowing them an opportunity to gain access to the network. This allows information to be accessed and stolen. 0 days are concerning because there are times when this vulnerability can be exploited and the attack goes unnoticed because they are difficult to identify and even analyze until it is too late and the damage is already done. Ransomware, as everybody here now knows through direct experience, encrypts files or entire file systems until the victim pays an amount, that is to say the ransom, predetermined by the attacker. We will leverage several options moving forward. We will ensure that each system has security software that can block encryption attempts from unknown and malicious software. Additionally, we will update our network-based intrusion detection and prevention software to look for indicators of a ransomware attack and to respond appropriately. Not forgetting the concept of defense in depth, we will make similar updates to the host-based intrusion detection and prevention software. There are several security controls that will help to protect against supply chain threats, but these options have specifically been selected due to the level to which they apply specifically to supply chain risks. As a government entity, we must absolutely ensure that all suppliers and components are authorized and official. This means avoiding gray market resellers, even if the prices are substantially lower than authorized channels. The potential risks, and therefore costs, far outweigh any immediate savings. We also recommend using accredited or certified suppliers, contractors, and subcontractors. Ideally, more than one supplier should be identified for each critical service or component. Organizations that are ISO 9001 certified have shown that they 1. Consistently provide products and services that meet customer and applicable statutory and regulatory requirements, and 2. Work to enhance customer satisfaction through the effective application of the system, including processes for improvement of the system and the assurance of conformity to customer and applicable statutory and regulatory requirements. Lastly, all software, hardware, and tools used in the development of software must be actively supported and developed. This includes any software libraries or modules that are used in the creation of a software product. There are a number of costs to be considered. Software can be developed in-house or purchased from an outside source. The estimated number of workdays and hours needed to develop software in-house should be carefully examined. If there is a product on the market that can meet the needs of the organization, purchasing or licensing that software may be the smarter route, especially when you consider the need for security patches. All software has some sort of learning curve. We should expect to spend some resources on training developers and users on how to utilize new development tools and software programs, respectively. Ongoing technical support for the software must also be considered. Implementation of new software can be painful, depending on how well the software interacts with other programs and hardware already present in the information system. Regulations and data security must be followed and maintained, respectively. However, the cost of defensive measures is typically cheaper than the cost of remediation and recovery, especially for those avoidable incidents where downtime may last for days or longer. Our contracts must include language that enhances security and does not leave us with our hands tied. We must ensure that common metrics are established for security. These metrics should factor in costs, schedules, and levels of performance. Additionally, we should ensure a right to audit clause is included in all contracts. Lastly, language permitting initial verification and occasional re-verification of compliance with legal rules and regulations and industry standards must be included. By dealing only with suppliers that follow the law and industry standards, we reduce our own potential liabilities. To summarize some of the content covered here today, we will utilize Agile SDLC methodologies moving forward as they are best suited for keeping Australia ahead of threats and competitive in the global economy. We will ensure all hardware and software obtained from and used by the supply chain is actively developed and supported. Lastly, we will ensure security controls and best practices like regular software patching are in place and applied during every phase of the SDLC. Are there any questions? The content and discussion today were informed by the references listed on this slide.